Well, hello there, all you lovely people. This is Deus Ex Machina, your true king. Now, unfortunately, there is not any free will, and so the universe machine simply will always make the most ironic thing happen. Now, I am not your true king because I am the largest, but I am, however, the wisest. And so ultimately, in the martial arts video, Peace Through Strength, a Czech woman is playing the song He Is Sailing, with lyrics talking about the coming of a king or messiah. Okay? And so, ultimately, it starts out saying, weakest and strongest will dance in delight, all illuminous our Savior, they bring him forth. It talks about, ultimately, um, all the souls he to touch, millions and millions. All right? It's talking about the coming of a king or a savior. Okay? Now, ultimately, um, my level of enlightenment is somewhat special. And so let's say, some people take all their games of online chess very seriously and read books about all the gambits. Frankly, um, devoting time and bandwidth to learning a bunch of gambits about chess and taking all your games very seriously is quite silly. And so ultimately, it's just a constrained game with a bunch of pieces that can move in predefined ways. And ultimately, you can determine your opponent's optimal move given the board state and think many moves ahead. Frankly, the best artificial intelligence systems can outperform the majority of humans in chess, and so on and so forth. And so, Magnus Carlsen is thought to have, in terms of fundamental IQ, a higher IQ than Elon Musk. But Elon Musk devoted his time and energy to initiatives that are more visionary, creative, and honestly more worthwhile than simply turning your mind into a very powerful chess computer. If Musk sat down with Magnus Carlsen, the most likely outcome is that Magnus Carlsen would outclass Elon, and so on and so forth. But does Magnus Carlsen have the technical chops and engineering capability of Elon? Most likely not, because Magnus Carlsen did not devote his time to such things. And so, what you devote your time to is important. There is a clip of Bill Gates being defeated by Magnus Carlsen in chess. And so, ultimately, Lex Fridman as well said that he does not devote time to learning much about chess because he doesn't view it as worth his time, which is the truth. But anyway, and so when I play online chess, sometimes I take the game seriously. Sometimes I do not, and I play to while away the time. However, when I am playing seriously, I am pretty good. Anyway, so in the martial arts video at Peace Through Strength, uh, uh, basically, you have the following. You take a section of that video from the 25-second mark to the 26-second mark, and you can go ahead and basically realize the following. By determinism, by irony, the lyrics of the song from the 25-second mark to the 26-second mark say the lyrics, Our True King. Now, the actual verse is Our True Kingdom Come. But precisely at a frame at the 26-second mark, I'm midair at flying kick in perfect flying kick extension. Kicking leg is extended, non-kicking leg is tucked. And so a frame at the 26-second mark is myself maximally extended in a flying kick. Kicking leg is extended, non-kicking leg is maximally tucked. All right? And so ironically, right as I reach perfect extension midair in the flying kick, the song completes saying the word king, but is not yet said dumb. And so basically the verse is Our True Kingdom Come, but 025 to 026 says Our True King with with the visuals corresponding to me running up, jumping, and then once it finishes saying king, I'm at perfect extension midair in the flying kick. All right. And so I realized it was a sign from the machine itself in that I'm your true king. Now, I am theologically correct, and I'm not the largest, but I am the wisest. What makes a king a king? Wisdom. Wisdom and vision. And so basically, I desire to turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. And so basically, I want to make love come back. Now, some of my videos have blown up. The video of me filming all the flags of the world has blown up to over 100,000 views. One of my songs is at over 1,000 views. My soccer tricks at nearly 5,000. One of my speeches at over 9,000. Now, ultimately, the speech that I made, without writing notes, that I just improvised, as I'm doing now. All right, I didn't customize the title to try and optimize for views. I didn't include any visual content or thumbnail. All right, but that is ironically over 9,000 views, over 30 likes. Thank you for the positive reactions. All right. After it blew up, I listened to it again. I realized not every single thing I said there was correct. And so the description amends any information that might have been inaccurate, because I'm getting nearer to the truth over time. All right, so on and so forth. Now, here is quickly what the truth is from your true king. Theologically, the truth is not atheism. It is not Christianity. It is non-benevolent deism. So that means there is God, but it is not benevolent. You also cannot pray or talk to it. And so why is there God? The machine that is the universe conserves energy, charge, and angular momentum. From 4.54 billion years ago, right when the Earth formed, there is a non-uniform density cloud of gas and dust. Gas and dust near to the sun is going faster, slower further away. And so that when that net angular momentum, that net angular momentum needs to be conserved upon collapse of the gas and dust cloud into the Earth. And so from 4.54 billion years ago, the Earth's been spinning towards the east due to a conservation of angular momentum. A stripper spinning around a pole will start to spin faster. If she brings her mass towards the pole, she's initially in a more spread out configuration. She brings her mass towards the pole. That is reducing her moment of inertia, therefore increasing angular velocity. All right. Quadcopter drone, two propellers going clockwise, two counterclockwise. And so you increase the speed of the clockwise ones. All right. You decrease the speed of the counterclockwise ones. You're adding a clockwise torque to the system that initially had zero angular momentum. And so then basically the whole quadcopter spins counterclockwise to maintain zero angular momentum. All right. And so in one of my shorts, you can see that. All right. And so that's just angular momentum. Energy conservation is a bit deeper. Sun is fusion reactor. At core, 4 hydrogen become 2 deuterium, become a single helium. The helium is less massive than the 4 hydrogens. The mass defect is ultimately sort of converted into energy and radiated to the Earth in the form of electromagnetic radiation, which is light, and also heat. All right, heat and light. All right, so electromagnetic radiation, visible light, ultraviolet, which could be damaging to the skin, and of course heat. All right, heat energy. All right, now pretty much all energy forms on the Earth exist because of the sun, and so what is an example of the energy form on Earth that exists because of the sun? Kinetic energy in the air, which is also called wind. And so the sun tends to heat land up faster than the sea because water has a very high specific heat capacity, and the fluid flow will be hot to cold. All right, that's during the days. In the nights, the land cools off faster than the sea, and so then the wind switches direction from sea to land. Topographic features such as mountains contribute to fluid flows as well. And then now, basically, you also have the rotation of the Earth contributing to fluid flow, but the rotation of the Earth is actually initially because of the protoplanetary disk that was orbiting the sun and the sun's gravity, and basically the net angular momentum that was conserved, and so that the Earth is rotating towards the east is still initially because of the sun. All right, and so and then of course the radiation from the sun decays with the square of the distance, so the equator will be hotter, the poles will be colder, and so fluid flow as well will be hot to cold. And so they are spinning towards the east. The sun heats up the land faster than the sea during the days. There's topographic features, mountains and valleys contribute to fluid flows. There's equator hot, poles are colder due to radiation decreasing with intensity as you get further away. And so the fluid flows on the Earth are entirely because of the sun fundamentally. That is kinetic energy in the air. And so then humans with creativity can construct a wind turbine, optimize the structure of the wind turbine blades to have the mathematically optimal curvature to harness the kinetic energy in the air to rotational energy, and then spin a dynamo, generate electrical energy, store that electrical energy in a battery, right, like a Tesla Megapack battery. All right. All right. And so, anyway, and so, quickly, a dynamo is like the opposite of a motor, and that basically, motion is inducing electrical current, whereas basically a motor is utilizing electrical current to produce motion. All right, so you have dynamo. The inverse of dynamo is a motor. Anyway, and so ultimately, all right, then you have solar. You have the photoelectric effect, solar panels, the sun's energy in light form, photoelectric effect, impinging solar panels, motion of charges. There's induced current. All right. Photovoltaic cell. All right. And then you use a Tesla Megapack, store the charge of the Tesla Megapack batteries. Copia Power with its solar farm uses Tesla Megapack batteries for storage. Then now, so let's see here now. So hold on now. Yeah. Anyway. And so, yeah. And then now, you might not understand how deep energy conservation goes. All right. Let's say there exists a Marionberry plant, right? Those Marionberries contain sugar content, right? Fructose, sucrose, whatever type of sugar content, right? And so basically, leaves have chlorophyll. Photosynthesis occurs. Photosynthesis, one of the ingredients is light, and so the sun's energy in light form impinges on the chlorophyll-infused leaves and then produces starch. Now, in the case of a growing tree, all right, I believe that starch that is produced due to initial photosynthesis upon the sprouting of the first few leaves goes towards building out the bark structure of the tree and growing the tree. Then when the tree is a certain level of maturation, that starts going towards the fattening out of its fruits. And so, but in the case of a marionberry, all right, um, you're going to slowly, all right, the leaves have chlorophyll, sunlight is impinging them, and basically slowly that produced starch is fattening out the content of the marionberries with sugar content, fructose, sucrose, and so they start out looking like a little bit pinkish, and they start building more and more tissue and then fattening out into the berry shape, and it goes from being pinkish to a sort of darkish purple. All right, and when it's a darkish purple, it's fattened out maximally with its sugar content and so on. All right, now a banana on a tree, a mango on a tree, even a marionberry, all right, these are objects that contain chemical potential energy, in that if the human body were to consume these objects, the saliva and digestive system would convert it into energy the body is using to move around and think and so on. All right? And so how did that chemical potential energy get there? Initially from the sun, ultimately. All right? And so solar energy in light form is a necessary ingredient for photosynthesis. All right? And then potentially I believe as well that there's some thing where some process aided by the sun where some level of evaporation that may occur on the surface of leaves or something may be such that there is actually some sort of negative pressure thing that is pulling water up into the tree, given evaporation at the surface of the leaves caused by the sun, and so on and so forth. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, and so on and so forth. Now, and so ultimately, I eat a mango. My saliva and digestive system is turning that into energy. Now, for a human, all right, that has arms. When a human is going to use their bicep to raise their forearm, the bicep has energy to do work. That's because the human body is consuming sugars, carbohydrates, which is energy that the body can use to move its muscles. All right, and so on and so forth. Right, and so, and there's conservation of charge, which applies to deriving equations for capacitors and circuits. Right, and so God designed the machine that is the universe to conserve energy, charge, and angular momentum. All right, those conservation laws do not exist arbitrarily, and so the atheists who are incorrect, they have disbelief in God, but they miss the point, which is right in front of them, which is that God designed those conservation laws, designed the machinations of the universe, and they are the machinations of the universe are mathematically understandable, and sort of spell out to us that there is intelligent design. All right? Now, here's where the theological position of non-benevolent deism gets really complex. And so while there is God, the intelligence that is God is not benevolent. All right? And so basically, evolution, mutation, and natural selection are allowed to iterate. Okay? And so basically, there will be evolutionary diamonds and duds. There will be Cristiano Ronaldo, even 40 years old, he has such a great mentality. He's scoring bicycle kicks at 40, makes $200 million a year. There'll be a dud, a fellow who's disabled and drooling into a rag, being wheeled around in a wheelchair. All right, and so in everything, evolution, mutation, and natural selection allows normal distributions. All right, and so the fellows on the lucky end of evolution who are in some way above average or rare, or diamonds, are not blessed by anything benevolent. The fellows that are the duds, some disabled guy drooling into a rag in a wheelchair, is not cursed by anything. And so non-benevolent deism understands, the understanding is the following. There is not any benevolent force allowing variance, just cold hard evolution, mutation, natural selection, genetic variation. All right. And so IQ distributions are approximately normal or Gaussian. And so Elon's IQ is maybe 155. With humility, based on my credentials, I could have an IQ of between 130 and 145, but not quite 155 like Elon. All right. And so my SAT in October 2018 was 1520 out of 1600, which is 99th percentile SAT. And then as an undergraduate freshman in college, I was working in a quantum computing lab and in a direct laser right 2 photon lithography lab around graduate students. And then I had the idea to combine both labs to 3D print ion traps. So basically, to make a quantum computer in the trapped ion paradigm, you need an ion trap, which is a structure that is going to help magnetically confine your ion, which is your quantum bit, and then you're going to like shoot lasers at it to drive transitions in the quantum bit. All right. And so what happened as a result of my idea is that the direct laser right 2 photon lithography lab made ion traps for the quantum computing lab. It took 2 years for them to do it, and then they wrote a paper about it. And the senior researchers were the authors, but my name is in the acknowledgement section of that paper as the person who suggested the collaboration. Now, I was in over my head. I was only a freshman in undergraduate college, and I was surrounded by graduate students. All right, but that whole thing happened ironically because of me. All right, but anyway, and so I did some amount of work in that quantum computing laboratory. But anyway, and then my GPA was a 3.7 out of 4, math major, double minor in computer science and physics, right? Which is high, right? It could have been higher if there was not the difficult time of remote instruction due to COVID, in which my grades were slightly worse, and so on. Now, and so on and so forth. So on and so forth. And so I started skipping my lectures. Like Fourier analysis, quantum mechanics, I started skipping the lectures, just reading the textbook instead, because I thought that the educational model was kind of redundant. The textbook has a copy of the information. The slideshow, presents information in the textbook. The slideshow during the lecture presents information that's readable in the textbook. And then the students copying down from the slideshow are making a third copy. So what are the 3 copies? The textbook, the slideshow, and then the notes that the student is copying off of the slideshow. And so I just started skipping all the lectures and just reading the textbook and doing the problem sets. And with that approach, I ended up topping the class in one of the Fourier analysis midterms. Just like this guy didn't even show up to any lectures. He just topped the class. And so I solved all the problems, and then also, the bonus problem. And so it said like 16.5 out of 16, and I ended up topping the class. But anyway, then I published some paper, which was my own authorship, working on multidisciplinary design optimization, which is an approach in simulation where you optimize a launch vehicle, like a student-built rocket, where you have a design vector, and so there are constraints. There are design constraints as to what the engineering team can feasibly manifest. Then there are performance constraints, like what altitude at apogee do you want. And so the aerodynamics model with a mathematical optimizer that can sort of converge on the ideal design vector, given the sort of design space, which is a multi-dimensional space containing all your dimensions that define variables in the design, right? And so one variable could be involving how you're going to structure the fins. So like, what is the fin span, and so on. And so there's certain like ideal parameterization that's going to achieve best performance in simulation. Then you make it real. Right? But anyway, and then I got into a very competitive graduate school that touts itself as like the number 6 electrical engineering graduate school master's program in the United States, and so on. However, I was attending on a federal loan, and so I ended up dropping out and canceling that loan because I felt like the amount of debt I was accruing was not really something I wanted to do, and felt like it wasn't necessarily proportional to the value. Repetitive problem sets, lectures that I could just read the textbook in my own time and get it, and ultimately, some slideshow with a lot of compressed mathematical expressions, professors saying this is this, this is that, this is this, without giving as deep of an explanation as the textbook does, and so on and so forth. So yeah. Now, I did all this as an immigrant from Jamaica, so I'm now a U.S. citizen. And so on and so forth. Anyway, and so often scholarships for master's students doing some kind of degree, where after you get the degree your earning potential is higher, are limited given present time of I think there are funding cuts affecting educational grants. And so for master's degrees, technical degrees, where after you get the degree your earning potential is higher, the funding opportunities for that are, in terms of full ride scholarships, are a bit more limited. And so and so on and so forth. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, and so this is all, I believe, correct information. But anyway, then I, of course, made a speech on sexuality, because I view, as your true king, I view the whole earth as a hopeless situation that I'm trying to make into a happy ending. All right. So I've converged on the correct theology, which is non-benevolent deism. Right. Now, Elon Musk is, the wealthiest man alive, the first trillionaire, and he's not very religious. He doesn't pray to anything. All right. He makes jokes that sometimes he'd say a prayer in relation to astronauts going up on a SpaceX craft, that they'd return safely or something. All right. But ultimately, he doesn't really pray. All right. But anyway, and so, and so basically, nothing benevolent, nothing benevolent, enabled Elon to be like 155 IQ, right end of bell curve, just emergent variance in evolution, natural selection. And so he is diamond. All right. And so this non-benevolent deism. Now, prayer evolved given that humans are goal-oriented agents, and they construct delusion in benevolence, and then they basically pray to their delusion of a benevolent God as goal-oriented agents. Then they may take outward action to try and manifest what they've prayed for. But then basically, if what was prayed for becomes manifest, especially given their outward action to try and do it anyway, the human brain is going to have a confirmation bias to reinforce the delusion in benevolence, right? And so basically, you have perpetuation of a delusion, which is the thing. Now, that this evolved is interesting, And so I know a Christian guy who said, the things I pray for, they really do become manifest. Right? But um, basically, um, that cycle kind of perpetuates. Anyway, um, and so on and so forth. Um, and so don't pray to anything. And this is the truth. But anyway, the truth is non-benevolent deism. Um, so anyway, um, in the past, I had attempted to make a religion called simulationism, where everyone just realized that this was probably a simulation. Now, all you can say in relation to that is that it is unfalsifiable. It cannot be proven false. And so the mathematical conservation laws that the universe adheres to imply intelligent design. Whether that implies that the intelligence that designed it is in a higher reality and we are basically in a lower simulation reality for them, is unknowable. And so rather than like that it's a simulation, right, you could say non-benevolent deism, that there is God, however it is not benevolent, you cannot pray to it, and most likely the conservation laws were designed by God and fully spell out to us that there is intelligent design. All right? Anyway, so on and so forth. Now, computers exist in our reality, and we can make simulations of whatever type of reality we want with whatever type of physics we want. All right? But anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, now I made a speech on sexuality, and so that's blown up. And so I'll go ahead and sort of say more stuff. So everything's kind of gone to hell. It's not pure. And so basically, anyway, so what I am by determinism is the following. I am, without shoes, compressing the hair on top of my head, 6'3.5" not even quite 6'4". All right, but a guy shorter than me has been telling people he's 6'5" because everything gets exaggerated. All right, I'm brown, I'm a light skin, I have a wide nose, I have thick lips. And then now, I am a grower human, and so I'm telepathic, right? Some humans are showers, some are growers, and so let's say I'm warm and I'm hydrated. My flaccid size, if I'm relaxed, warm, and hydrated, will often be somewhere in the range of 5 to 5.5. However, if it's freezing over winter time, homeostasis could constrict that flaccid to 4 inches. All right? But then the metric for peak male erect size is bone pressed erect length. You stand up, you get erect, take a measuring device, you compress the fat pad from the top to the bone. And so for myself, I've done this in recent times and seen myself at around 8.8 inches bone pressed, or basically roughly my peak is about 9 inches bone pressed for all intents and purposes. All right, and so you'll see me flaccid between 5 and 5.5. Freezing over winter time, my flaccid could be 4. But then if I'm healthy and well rested and hydrated and aroused, I can stand up and get erect, and my peak bone press will be like 8.8, or basically, again, for all intents and purposes, roughly 9. All right. And so why did bone press direct length become the metric for peak male erect size? It's because the entire bone press is functional insertable length. So basically, during intercourse, when a male is having intercourse, the fat pad actually compresses to the bone. And so during maximal insertion, the male fat pad compresses to the bone. And so the entire BPEL is functional, usable, or insertable length. All right, and so myself, I've seen like a peak of around 8.8. Again, 8.8, or basically 9. And so that's without exaggeration. And then the other metric now is the following: the shaft girth circumference, in which I'll be like 6 inches around, or maybe up to 6.2 around. But then I have a thicker glans. It's going to be between 6.5 and 7 around. All right, and so on and so forth. All right, and so on and so forth. All right, so in mathematics, all right, if you want to provide something to a single digit, if you're above 0.5 in an interval, you round up. And so an 8.8 peak bone press, by all intents and purposes, is approximately a peak bone press of 9 inches, for all intents and purposes. But anyway, now, so on and so forth. And so on and so forth. And so basically, I did some research as to like where I stand among consciousness. And so the peak bone press in the US is 5.6, right? And so myself at 8.8 is above the 99.99th percentile, which is very rare. Okay? And so my flaccid will often be 5.5, all right, unaroused. All right, and then my peak BPL 8.8, or roughly 9. All right. So anyway, and so basically, I'm trying to be as precise as possible. All right, and so my peak is very rare. All right, and so on and so forth. But I'm tall. All right, and so people, all right, actually may think the following, which is silly. All right, so there's the stereotype going around that the black males are more endowed. Is true. And so the life history theory is such that in sub-Saharan Africa, high pathogen exposure and high mortality led to evolutionary preference for high testosterone males and high fertility or high estradiol females. High testosterone males will be more endowed. High fertility and estradiol females will have larger backside and larger breasts. And so those African origin humans will have larger sexual assets on average. All right. And so the average BPEL of sub-Saharan African origin men is slightly more than the white men. Even then, there exist white anomalies. And so apparently the world record holder for male penis size or peak bone press is a white British male who goes by the name of Matt Barr. And so he's the world record holder in unexaggerated bone press, even though white and British. Larger than any black porn star that has existed. And so there are white anomalies given genetics and testosterone exposure during fetal development that are very endowed. All right. Now, quickly, all right. In the past, and people, all right, because I can read everyone's mind, could call me a liar for this. All right. In the past, I said my dick was 10 inches. All right. But I think my brain did this because of its knowledge that everything is exaggerated. Male height is exaggerated, and so is penis size. All right? And so here's the truth from your true king. All right? Grok can analyze the whole internet, including R-measured porn stars, and convert on unexaggerated bone press estimates for porn stars. Anton Harden is popular. He's short, he's 5'7". His peak bone press is estimated at between 8.25 and 8.75. His shaft girth circumference is estimated at 6 inches around, but he may be slightly more oval or wide as opposed to circular, but he's like estimated at 6 inches around. All right, but he's 5'7". And so when he's standing up and erect with a certain camera angle that is not flush, he could look like he's, basically approaching his knee with a camera angle, right? And so basically, he has short legs, he's 5'7". And so in exaggerated pornographic material, you're going to see Anton Harden, 11 inches, 11.5 inches, 12 inches, all right? And so, realistically, Anton's peak bone press might be like 8.5, 8.7 in viewer estimation, based on the frame analysis team. That gets exaggerated to 11, 11.5, or 12. All right. Similarly, Damian Daysky, his peak is estimated between 8.5 and 9, maybe 8.7, maybe approximately 9. Damian Daysky's porn profile says 12 inches. All right. And so ultimately, here's the truth for me. I'm 6'3.5", barefoot, no hair on top of my head. I'm tall. And so my peak bone press is honestly at least around 8.8. I'm trying to be really precise, so I'm not lying at all. All right. But in the porn world, 8.8 peak bone press actually equals 12 inches. All right. And so if you want to get on my back for my claim that I had a 10-inch dick, note that everything is exaggerated. And a bone press peak of like 8.8 equals 12 inches. All right, not 10 inches. So 8.8 goes to 12. All right. So anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, all right. And so basically, I seem to be a similar length to Anton Harden, or I even could have a slightly longer peak length compared to Anton. And I have about the same 6-inch shaft girth, but Anton may be a little bit wider or more oval, whereas I'm a bit more circular. But then I have 6.5 to 7 inches of girth around my glans or head. All right. But Anton's dick is on a 5'7" body, mine is on a 6'3.5" body. All right. So on and so forth. All right. Now, Hollywood Cash is a modern porn star. I am more than Hollywood Cash. Hollywood Cash is quite thin. All right. Now we're going to get to the most popular or the biggest, and that is Break. That's Julio Gomez. All right. Where his pornographic content might have had over 200 million views. All right. And so, Julio's height was exaggerated to 6 feet tall, but barefoot estimates for Julio, in comparison to the height of his female co-stars, may be more so like 5'10" or 5'11". Similarly, I am 6'3.5" barefoot, no shoes on, compressed hair on top of my head, not 6'5". All right. So Julio may be 5'10", 5'11" barefoot. All right. And then his his porn star exaggeration would be 14 inches. They'd say 14. All right. And so you ask Grok, Julio's peak bone press was estimated at being in the following range: 9 to 9.75. All right. And so you could say as well, around 9.5 bone pressed at peak. All right. However, here's the following nuance. Visually, you can inspect his dick. He has a pelvic detachment. And so for like 1 inch or more at the base of his dick, you can see signs of a pelvic detachment, either an intentional surgical ligament cut or naturally occurring pelvic detachment because of his sickle cell anemia and priapism health condition. And so the visual estimate of him having a bone press peak of like up to 9.5, all right, includes that pelvic detachment section, all right? And so here we have the following. My BPEL peak might be 8.8, all right, whereas his was estimated at around 9.5, all right? Then the exaggeration for that would be 14, all right? And so, but again, that includes this like odd looking pelvic detachment thing at the base of his dick, all right? And so I don't have a pelvic detachment, all right? Okay, and so basically, so on and so forth. Now, I decided the following. I decided that I would actually get very fit, strong legs, core, cardio, pelvic floor, learn how to maintain my peak size, learn how to not have premature ejaculation, pace myself, have sensitivity control, and take a bunch of standing pictures. All right. So there exists a standing picture where basically I'm standing up and fully erect. Julio is kneeling and fully erect and performing insertion. And so I scaled the head size. The length from back of neck to nose is the same. I scaled the width of the thigh that is nearest to the camera. That thigh width is about the same. Interestingly, all right, I'm taller, my torso is longer. All right, that picture's on my OnlyFans. I have a few fans on my OnlyFans, including a new subscriber that is a Muslim woman. Now, in that image, the lengths of our dicks looks to be identical. And so basically, in that scaled image, the lengths of our dicks appears identical. However, Julio was the thickest by genetics and also by sickle cell anemia and priapism causing swollen tissue. All right. And so in that scaled image, our lengths look the same, but in the shaft girth, you can measure his apparent shaft girth and port it onto mine. You see that I'm slightly thinner in shaft. All right, but while I'm slightly thinner in shaft, he has a small glans or head of penis, whereas I have a larger glans or head of penis. And so the girth around the glans or head of my dick is the same or more as Julio's shaft girth. All right, and my shaft is a little bit thinner than his because Julio was the thickest. All right, and so on and so forth. And so that scaled image is proof of me being comparable to Julio. Now, I said my peak bone press was, with humility, like 8.8, right? Whereas Julio's was estimated at around 9.5, right? And so basically, that we appear to be the same length is because of the following. He could either not necessarily be at peak extension, or because he's performing insertion and he's compressing a little bit, including his pelvic detachment section at the base of his dick compressing a little bit. All right. And so the lengths on us look the same. Measure his shaft girth, ported onto mine, you'll see I appear slightly thinner. And then, however, I have a large glans, he has a small glans. All right. And so roughly, you might get the following. I'm 6'3.5". Julio was 5'10" or 5'11". My peak bone press is around 8.8, whereas his might have been around 9.5, but that might have included this pelvic detachment section at the base of his dick. And then my shaft girth is in the 6 to 6.2 range. his was in the 6.5 to 6.75 range. Then my glans girth is in the 6.5 to 7 inch range, but then his glans was actually smaller than his shaft. All right, so I have a larger glans than he does. All right, and so basically, all right, ultimately, I am lucky, all right, to be that endowed at my peak, and then also 6 to 6.2 inch shaft girth circumference is not thin. It actually is moderately thick enough for a female vagina to grip that thickness and derive pleasure. Giulio's thicker shaft is extreme, and so in a video with Bella Rossi, you can see it was a bit much for Bella Rossi. Bella Rossi says, "You are way big for me." At times she expresses discomfort, and at times she appears to, kick him away or something, as a control mechanism. I don't know, or something. But anyway, so on and so forth. But anyway, and so basically, things have gotten very silly, so on and so forth. Anyway, so on and so forth. Now, anyway, anyway, so anyway, anyway, and so ultimately, as your true king, I'll tell you the following truth. All right, there is no size supremacy thing. All right, there's just good fits for each other. There's going to be too big, too small, just right. All right, and so, all right, so I'm going to relay some stories. All right, and so basically, I have a peak DPL of 8.8, 6 to 6.2 shaft girth, 6.5 to 7 around my glans. All right, a woman 11 years older than me had sex with me, and I was fully erect sitting down on the couch. She was facing away from me, mounting my dick in reverse cowgirl for 5 whole seconds, sitting down on the head of my dick with her whole body weight. My dick was not going in. She wasn't a virgin. She had a lot of sex, but my glans is between 6.5 and 7 inches in girth, something like that, which is as thick or thicker than Giulio's shaft. And so basically, it wasn't going in. And so she realized it wasn't going in, and she popped open a bottle of lube that she had bought, because she bought a lube bottle precisely for the reason of having sex with me. And then basically, the lube actually enabled her to take me at all. All right. Now, but for me, of course, my shaft is going to be slightly thinner than glans. All right. And so the interesting thing with me is that ultimately, during intercourse, all right, ultimately, at slightly over 6 inch shaft girth is still quite thick, and is going to enable the female vagina to grip the shaft and derive pleasure. But then the bonus with me is I have like an additional sort of spike in girth at glans, which allows like a unique sort of concentration in girth at glans during intercourse or during stroking motion, which actually is unique. And so basically, the first time I had sex with this woman, all right, she was bouncing on me, screaming, looking at me with wide eyes, all right, and then she stopped and had a leg shaking orgasm. And then when we finished, I said, "How many times did you orgasm?" Her consciousness told me, "I don't know hold on, quickly." And so I said, "How many times did you orgasm?" And her consciousness said to me, "I don't know, it was like 4 times." And my legs were shaking. And it was twice on the floor and twice on the couch. And so ultimately, multiple orgasms or orgasm count of 4 is a good performance. This was only the second time in my life I was having sex, and this woman was 11 years older than me and very sexually experienced. Now, she was 5'9" or 5'10", 160 pounds, flat as a board on top, but very large backside, and a white Norwegian woman. All right, and so she was 35 at the time. I was 24. Okay, and so that happened. Now, yet another time with the same person, she starts bleeding, and so she says, "Hold on, I'm bleeding." I pull out. There's blood on the head of my dick. She cleans up the blood. We continue having intercourse. And then I reach peak size inside of her. She clenches her ass, pulls away a little bit, screams, whips her head around and looks at me with wide eyes. And then I pull out of her, a blob of blood comes out of her. And she's informed me that she was not on her period. She's obviously not losing her virginity. She said that with larger men, this type of bleeding could occur. Right? And so this was surprising to me because she's, again, 11 years older than me and sexually experienced. And so for my size to make her bleed means that I am among the larger men, or one of the largest that she's ever taken successfully. Hence, she required lube to even take me at all initially. All right? Now, this is a pretty shocking fact, and so this is precisely why the scaled image between myself and Julio is to scale. In that scaled image, heads are the same, width of our thighs nearest the camera is the same, our lengths look the same, my shaft girth appears slightly thinner, but then I have a larger glans than he does. All right? And so when you have sex with me, you're getting very similar to Julio, a similar length, slightly thinner shaft, but then thicker glans or head. All right, so on and so forth. So I have an OnlyFans. There's a few fans, including a Muslim woman is a new fan on my OnlyFans. All right. Now, however, all right, to be maximally sexually performant, all right, you need to be hydrated, well rested, not hungry, aroused, warm. Yeah, you gotta have strong legs, core cardio, and pelvic floor, and so on. And you can't be sick, all right? And so I got extremely fit and learned how to maintain my peak size, sitting down, standing up, exerting myself, did a standing photo shoot, produced the picture to scale with myself and Julio where I look very close, all right? And then, by irony, because the whole thing is ironic, what happens is that I get a really, really high fever and a flu-like virus, and that causes dehydration, kill sperm count, and general low energy and libido. And so when a male human has a high fever and a flu-like virus, they will have erectile dysfunction if attempting intercourse because their body's in a really weak state. All right? And so ultimately, the immediate next time I had sex, after I got this standing picture where I look very close to Julio, by irony, was me having sex with a high fever and virus with erectile dysfunction. All right? And so basically, all right, as a grower, all right, what happened is the following. A woman I was interested in seeing was on a tight schedule, very tight schedule. And then I was also on a tight schedule. Constraint satisfaction was such that the window of opportunity in which I could see this woman coincided with me being sick with a high fever and virus. And so basically, out of my desire to see her, out of my love for her, I saw her when I was sick. The sex that we had when I was sick was underwhelming. All right? And so very first time, I was largely having intercourse with her with my flaccid size, because I was so weak I was not even potent. My body had a high fever and a virus. All right? And so on. Now, I recovered a little bit more from the illness and got a little bit more potent. So we tried a second time. And so basically, it was okay, but I was still sick, still probably not at peak. And then my ability to pace myself, do sensitivity control, avoid premature ejaculation was subpar. For example, the very first time I had intercourse with her, I lasted so long to give her 4 orgasms without myself reaching an orgasm, and I withstood her bouncing on me for a very long time without reaching orgasm. All right, so on and so forth. And so I had underwhelming sex when sick. Now the world is not that pure at present, and so sex has been publicized and monetized and made impure, not sacred. All right, and so basically, you have the following, which is that basically, um, basically, um, basically, um, it, 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 I had underwhelming sex when I was sick, right? And so then basically, um, uh, anyway, and so then basically, um, 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 and so, um, and so basically, the it oh Josh, all this stuff happened. But anyway, and so yeah, and so anyway, that might have left a bad taste in the woman's mouth. Anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, and so yeah, and so I'll forever remember, when I was sick with a high fever and virus, having sex with a woman with largely my flaccid size due to weakness and illness, due to constraint satisfaction, schedule constraint optimization, and the fact that I was sick in the window of opportunity. And so, all right, if you're a male sex worker or a porn star, you can't show up to a gig sick and with ED. That's not going to work. But this experience taught me about the following. In pure marriage or relationships, there's the commitment in sickness and in health, where basically you get the following. You commit to your partner in sickness and in health. So let's say I'm sick with a high fever and virus, and you're my partner and you want sex from me, but I'm not potent because I'm sick. I could have sex with you, but it'd be largely my flaccid size that's having sex with you. All right? Then let's say you're my partner and I'm healthy and I'm strong and I'm potent and you want sex from me. No problem. I'll be healthy and strong and potent. So in my present state, pretty much on command, I can stand up, become aroused, achieve my peak bone press of like 8.8, and maintain it for a while without premature ejaculation. That's me right now. All right. And so now I'm fine. And so basically, in sickness and in health from Christianity is profound in relation to, in a pure relationship, commitment in ups and downs. All right, so on and so forth. Anyway, now non-benevolent deism is the truth. However, the world's religions evolved for a reason, and the moral principles of the world's religions are good. All right, so on and so forth. So anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, anyway, yeah. So anyway, anyway, now I don't believe in size supremacy, and so again, I'm your true king. I'm gonna make love come back, and so there are good matches for each other. Some women will be smaller in terms of vaginal accommodation. Some men will be smaller, and so the Asian women as a race have smaller vaginal accommodation. A study was done compared to Western women. The Asian men as a race have smaller peak bone press on average compared to other racial groups. the Asian couples are therefore a good match for each other. They are both small, and so there exist beautiful and pure Asian couples, and they have an intellectual and emotional connection, and they have shared culture. All right, and this is where love comes back. What is messed up, and it, what I find distasteful, is when some Asian woman does a porn scene with Julio or Break. All right, and she's doing that for attention, for money, getting compensated as a female porn star who's Asian, having sex with Julio, right? And that's a bit distasteful in my opinion. Anyway, all right, so on and so forth. Anyway, yeah. Um, anyway, yeah. So anyway, um, anyway, um, anyway, um, yeah. So anyway, so anyway, um, yeah. So yeah, um, my peak bone press is like 8.8, so that's above the 99.99th percentile, but not the largest. In viewer estimation, Julio's peak was around 9.5, but that might have included his pelvic detachment thing. Then Anton's peak is between 8.25 and 8.75 in viewer estimation, but he's 5'7", he's short, right? And so then, so on and so forth, right? So anyway, yeah. And so I've stood up, been roughly fully erect, compressed a measuring device from the top, taken a measuring device, compressed the fat pad from the top to bone, and seen myself. So there's 8, then there's 9, then there's the quarter divisions, 8.25, 8.5, 8.75, and 9. And so I've seen myself at times, roughly at like 8.8, all right, roughly at my peak. And so for all intents and purposes, you should say that my peak bone press is 9. All right, so I'm a 9 max. I'm pretty much a 9 max BPEL. All right. And so again, the entire BPL is functional insertable length, right? Because the fat pad compresses to bone during maximal insertion, and so on and so forth. But anyway, there are a few guys that are more than a 9 BPL max, but they're very rare. Like Matt Barr, the world record holder, is more than a 9 BPL max. All right, but an unexaggerated peak bone press of 8.8 or basically 9 is over the 99.99th percentile. If a woman, all right, was looking to assess the entirety of male consciousness and find the largest, myself at an 8.8 or basically 9-inch BPEL maximum would be above the 99.99th percentile, but not the largest. There may be a 9.5 max. Julio was a 9.5 max based on viewer estimation, but that might have included this pelvic detachment thing at the base of his dick. And then there's Matt Barr, the world record holder, who is larger than Julio apparently and larger than myself. All right, but ultimately, I'm rare. All right, but anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, so on and so forth. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, so anyway, so yeah. Anyway, yeah. So yeah. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, um, so ultimately, there's the following. So let's see. Um, if like any entity was like testing me as to my sexual capabilities, the second time I had sex in my life was with a very sexually experienced woman who was 35, I was 24, and she said she came 4 times with shaking legs. So, and then required lube to even take me at all. And then she started bleeding due to some internal tear due to my size some other time. So, anyway, now the female vagina, even for like taller women, when a female human gets aroused, the vagina elongates, and so the depth to cervix elongates when they get aroused, and so basically, then um, even for taller women, they don't really exceed a maximum cervical depth when aroused of like 8 inches, and so myself with a peak bone press of 8.8, compressed fat pad to bone, my peak bone press, which is insertable, will actually like sort of reach the female cervix for a woman who's like 8 inches at cervical depth when maximally aroused. And so even for a larger, taller woman, they're not deeper than eight. They're not deeper than like 8 inches at cervix. And so hence this woman who was experienced, who said that she tends to get like tighter as she gets deeper. Hence my size made her bleed one time, because my size and then my girth at glans is going all the way to her cervix. Right? But anyway, so on. And so she screamed and whipped her head around and looked at me with wide eyes one time when I was at peak size inside of her. And I pull out of her, then there's blood. So, anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, then she gave me a high five and said that her vagina would heal after that. So, anyway, this all actually happened. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, um, anyway, anyway. So yeah, I'm also telepathic, and so other men who are insecure want me to be a 2-year-old who's 5 inches with erectile dysfunction. So if I have a high fever and a virus, and I'm really weak and sick, if I'm having sex with my flaccid size and I'm really sick, I could be 5 inches. All right, so sick, I'll be a 5. Healthy and potent, I'll be roughly a 9-inch bone press peak insertable at maximum erect size. And so in my present state, sitting down, standing up, I can maintain my peak for a while without premature ejaculation. Anyway, so on and so forth. I have an evolutionary preference for a larger, taller woman with larger back size, probably because I'm very endowed. And so, some guys may have a thing for dominating tiny women, but I like large women with large backside. So this woman was like 5'10", 5'9", 160 pounds, very flat on top, but very large backside. And then because she's so tall, she probably may have a peak depth to cervix when aroused of like 8 inches. And so then my peak insertable of like 9 inches is like perfect match for her. And then it's good. And so a large man fit for a large woman. A man who's smaller fit for a woman who's smaller. So the Chinese women have smaller vaginal accommodation, Chinese men have smaller bone press. They're couples, right? Anyway, shared culture, intellectually and emotionally connected, so on and so forth. Beauty, order. All right? Anyway. So, anyway. Yeah. So, anyway. Yeah. Um, so, uh, anyway. So, yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Um, so, all right. So, yeah. Now, so, so, so there's a curse to everything. And so this is why envy is the occupation of the unwise. And so basically, um, if you're a male porn star, your image is associated with that vulgarity. If you're famous of any kind, it's hard to have a private life, and you may have haters. And then, there's cons. And so it's difficult for someone to be a respected technical person or fellow of rural society, but at the same time be, porn star with pornographic image and fame. Those two worlds rarely ever overlap, right? So anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, um, and so, um, anyway, um, and so there's a curse to being a porn star. There's a curse to everything. There's cons, and so there are men who are intelligent, contributing in really, meaningful ways to civilization with whatever their skill set is. Necessary, meaningful ways. And so civilization needs technical people, needs political people, and so there are a whole lot of people who are contributing to civilization in like useful and necessary or important ways. Political professionals, technical professionals, all right. And so then those people earn a salary, then they have a wife. Great, they keep their sexuality private. Then you have the male porn stars. Their sexuality is public. That is their direct bread and butter. All right, but the curse is that their image is associated with that vulgarity. Some people may think that's not super respectable of a profession. All right, and then there's going to be haters. There's going to be, when you have any level of fame, it's hard to have a private life. There's a curse to that as well. There's pressure from fame. All right, so on and so forth. Anyway, so on and so forth. Now, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, now, so I want to make love come back, and so basically, I said that if a woman wants only size, she could manufacture a dildo to her specifications, attach it to a programmable robot where you can vary the stroke frequency. And so there do exist such robots. Then you could have sex with the machine. Because if you actually, for love to come back, there's so many other aspects of the male that are important. Shared interests, emotions, the man's vision. Do you like what he does for work? Do you like his quirks? This, that, and the other. All right. And so on and so forth. All right. Right. You guys have like a nice personality. Do you have like shared personality? Shared personality traits. Can you learn from each other? Can you build a life together? These are all very important things. Anyway, so anyway, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I don't envy anyone, because envy is the occupation of the unwise. Anything you could envy also comes with some level of curse. There's cons, and so on. But anyway, so yeah. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, um, anyway, um, yeah. Anyway, so like a bunch of guys are insecure, um, but ultimately, there's not free will. It's just the deterministic, ironic story. And so that I grow to a peak that is very endowed. Other men would be jealous of that, all right? But this is very silly, all right? And so, there's beautiful Asian couples where, they're happy and they're both small, and then they have connection and so on, yada yada yada. there's this, that, and the other. And so basically, it's just, anyway, everything's very silly. And so there's lots of insecure people who envy other people, and so on. But anyway, anyway, so anyway, I don't envy anyone. So you must understand, anything you could envy comes with cons. So anyway, so yeah, anyway, yeah, yeah. So anyway, anyway, yeah. Anyway, for some reason you can see me doing pretty much everything: playing Clair de Lune, dancing like Michael Jackson, doing martial arts and peace through strength, flying kick, saying "Our True King." Yeah. So Clair de Lune, dancing like Michael, martial arts, soccer tricks, vocal impersonations, singing like Sinatra, Nat King Cole, Childish Gambino, Earn, so on. Now, I'm telepathic, so I can read everyone's mind. And so how muscular or built and filled out I am will like fluctuate over time, depending on, whether I'm working out with high frequency, what my diet's like, whether I'm living in a situation where I'm just like buying groceries and making all my meals for myself, so on. And so basically, in some of my videos, I'll look more muscular, like I have more mass on me. Some of them I'll look skinnier. All right. So in a vocal impersonations video I made, I looked skinnier. In some of my other videos, I could look more muscular. Like an I Am God video I made a long time ago. And then, so some of the videos I could look skinnier, some of them I could look more muscular. And then varies with my living situation, whether I'm buying groceries and making all the meals myself, whether I'm working out with high frequency or not. Sometimes I'm skinnier, sometimes I'm more muscular. And then also in some of the videos, how groomed I am will vary. And so, because I'm telepathic, right? If I'm not very well groomed, or my beard and hair is messy, from certain angles I could look like a rat. All right. But if I am very well groomed, beard is nice, hair is nice, I could look extraordinarily handsome. And so, for example, the thumbnail for the video Peace Through Strength, I'm very well groomed and I look extraordinarily handsome. In sections of the video where I'm playing Clair de Lune, I'm very well groomed and I look extraordinarily handsome. If the grooming is subpar, beard is messy, hair is messy, certain angles, I look like a rat. All right. So I am the duality of handsome and a rat. Anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, and then at times in some videos I could have more muscle on me, at times I could be skinnier. Anyway, and so in the video with the vocal impersonations, where I'm impersonating Sinatra, Nat King Cole, Childish Gambino, I think I was skinnier, and my grooming was probably subpar. Like, beard is messy, hair is not perfect. But anyway, but the vocal quality of the impersonations was pretty good. And I included my face to make sure there's evidence of me, like, this actually is my voice doing all those impersonations. But anyway, so yeah. Anyway, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, uh, yeah. So yeah, I yeah yeah. Anyway, um, yeah. So there's a picture on my OnlyFans where I look very close to Julio, and it's to scale. So my peak is at least 8.8 bone press again. So I could be a porn star, but there's curses to being a porn star. And some people will want to prevent me from being a porn star or say I'm not good enough. I already objectively know I am good enough or large enough, and I can maintain my peak size as well now. But then people would like want to try and stop me. I don't care about the people who are trying to stop me becoming a porn star because they're curses to being a porn star. And as well, you have to provide pictures. And so, one of the pictures you have to provide to be a porn star on Blackter.com is basically a picture of erect penis. And so, in formal bone press direct length, you're supposed to like stand up, get erect, take a measuring device, and from the top, compress the fat pad to the bone, then measure the termination of glands. Um, because I only have two hands, while I have subjectively seen myself at a peak bone press of like 8.8, I like haven't like gotten a picture where I have a picture to verify that bone press. One of my pictures with uh, you know with a reference object was my dick beside a L'Oreal shampoo bottle, and that L'Oreal shampoo bottle is like 8.6 inches in height, and so but it was really imperfect, not perfectly flush, and so maybe if I get some new partner or girlfriend, I could like have her take the picture of my bone press or something with her hands while I am like actually like doing the bone press. She's taking the picture of it. But anyway, I don't necessarily want to be a porn star because there's curses to it, and your image is associated with that vulgarity and stuff. And there's a curse to like everything. Anyway, but I'm good enough to be one. I'm a light skin. Anyway, so yeah. So when I was sick with a high fever and virus, I was tiny and like having intercourse with my flaccid 5-incher because I was sick and weak and not potent. It was like 1 or 2 orgasms. In the past, she had like 4 orgasms and she required lube to even take me. And then she actually started bleeding due to an internal tear another time. So yeah. So anyway, and so having a peak bone press unexaggerated of 8.8 is above the 99.99th percentile and good enough to be a male porn star. And the standing picture where I am to scale with Julia and look comparable is proof that I am good enough to be a male porn star. And so the length of Julia and I in that picture looks about the same. My shaft girth is slightly thinner. Then I have a larger glans or head. And then Hollywood Cash is actually a lot thinner than Julio. And so I'm actually more than Hollywood Cash, even though Hollywood's a porn star and so on. But I'm a brown, light-skinned guy. So anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, so yeah. So anyway, um, yeah. So yeah. So yeah. So anyway, yeah. So yeah. Yeah. So so yeah. Anyway, so so anyway, but the best evidence of my peak size is the scale picture with me and Julio, where length from back and neck to nose is same, with the thigh is same, the thigh nearest the camera, and then the length of our dicks looks the same. My shaft girth looks a little bit thinner, but then I have a larger glans or head than he does. So yeah, roughly same length, slightly thinner shaft, thicker head. All right, it's the skill. So anyway, um, yeah. Uh, anyway, uh, so um, so so yeah. Um, so anyway, all right. So anyway, um, anyway, yeah. I should probably stop talking now. But anyway, so that this has been more information from your true king. I am the way, the truth, and the light. I am the Deus Ex Machina, espousing the truth of non-benevolent deism who will turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. Subscribe to the channel.